Okay. So we will kickstart as people join in, and I hope that, anyways, the recording will be available. So if someone's missed some interesting point, they can go back and check it. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sukanya. I'm with nasscom, and I take care of the GCC BPM segment, and also focused on designing strategy to build the next emerging hubs for the IT BPM industry in India. And today we have with us some eminent industry leaders who have successfully explored the emerging hub model for their enterprises and created great value. And we are here to talk about our experiences of building high quality teams in some of the emerging hubs and what that has, what impact that has created for our organization. I mean, if all of you have been watching Shark Tank just the last few seasons, you'll see what wonderful innovations have come up from the non-metro cities, and that just goes to show the quality of talent, enthusiasm, and capability that is available with us across India, and that can become serious advantage for our IT BPM industry. We are sure about it. And just to harness and build an understanding, last year, we, along with our partners, Deloitte, we created a report to profile about 26 such locations. There are many, many more locations, but we had to start somewhere. So we picked 26 and we started our analysis to understand how these locations are creating the right raw material and resources for building great products, solutions, and business service lines for at global standards. So what we'll do today is we'll first invite our partners, Deloitte and Keerthi, to share with all of you a little bit of insights of some of the amazing, numbers and data and case studies that we saw during the report creation. And then we will talk to our industry leaders and understand their journey. Please make it interactive. Please feel free to use the Q&A and the chat to share comments, questions, experiences. Happy to hear from all of you. We'll obviously keep some time separately for Q&A, but if something comes up interesting, we're happy to take it up. Will be great if you can also keep introducing yourself in the chat, which company, any specific interest area. It'll help us build our conversation too. So over to you, Keerthi.
Thank you, Sukanya, and thanks for setting the context. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. So what we'll do is, like Sukanya mentioned, we launched this Emerging Technology Hubs of India report in August 2023. Where we have comprehensively profiled 26 upcoming emerging locations. And we'll use the next 10 to 15 odd minutes where I'll just take you through the glimpse of the report. And it's, of course, a 100-pager plus, and to condense it at 10 minutes is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'll try to do my best that way. And why did we even embark on this report was the fundamental question that we essentially started with, right? And when we look at India's position in the global sourcing market, our 227 billion USD of IT BPM exports in 2022, estimated to be 245 billion, and we should have the numbers soon from nasscom in another month or so, and holds the pole position, needless to say, with over 50% of market share. Now, this includes IT exports, BPM exports, engineering R&D exports, as well as the GCC export revenue, right? And if we look at these numbers, a lion's share of these exports typically come from the 7 metro locations, which have been established locations for over 3 decades now. And as we move forward with the CAGR for the IT BPM exports to be around 9 to 10%, and in some specific sectors like GCC and ER&D, we expect it to be anywhere between 12 and 14%. Growth is imminent. And with more growth coming in and more specialized capabilities that are expected to be set up in the country going forward in the next 5-10 years, we expect a lot of proliferation of this work essentially moving into the emerging hub locations beyond what the metros can take. And if you look at it in very simplistic terms, this is principles of the first industrial revolution, where work typically moves to where workers are, right? And that's what has been happening in the last 3 decades of work moving into India. And now if we use a hyperlocal lens, this is essentially work flowing in from the metros and eventually getting into the emerging hub locations, right? And some of the top benefits, essentially, when we look at it, I'm sure most of you will have an experience of running operations or would have come across one from a cost of operations perspective. There definitely is an advantage. Of course, from city to city, this could vary. But when you take a gross average of these emerging hubs and compare it with some of the metro locations, overall 15 to 25% range of bottom line benefits, right? And if you could break this into two parts, just the infrastructure real estate would kind of bring in anywhere between 45 to 50% savings. And from a talent cost perspective, about 20 to 25%. Talent acquisition and retention is another key driver. Attrition rates, while it has been on the rise, especially after COVID, which is like, it's a global phenomenon, we see still a significant delta between emerging hubs and tier one locations. The quality of infrastructure, the quality of living, most of you will be able to relate to if you're from any of the big cities. Getting to office within 25 minutes is a seriously thing to consider, right? Compared to most of the metro locations where we would commute. And very significant push from various state governments trying to drive tier two growth and emerging hub location growth across these locations. I'll take you through some of these specific details, but before that, this is the list of 26 emerging hub locations that we covered. And like Sukanya said, we at least wanted to have a starting point to put a 25, 26 locations out. But also another key consideration was some of the factors, like we looked at what the overall population is, and some of the cutoff that we had was, let's look at about 700 and 750,000 plus kind of a population in cities, which kind of qualifies to at least 4,000 to 5,000 STEM graduate output from these locations. Locations specifically, which is falling within the smart city initiatives or the first, second, and the third wave, that was another consideration. And connectivity and some strategic position of these locations geographically, closer to some of the metros, was another criteria. And another interesting set of aspects, we'll again talk through some of these in details, where I wanted to spend most of my time beyond the usual talent and the cost story is, Sukanya touched upon it earlier, the startup momentum that we see in some of these tier two locations. And why is startup ecosystem important? One, because it kind of completes the circle when we look at the larger ecosystem. One is the academia. So the academic hubs are some of these locations where typically most of the academic institutions are. Large part of the workforce typically come from these locations into the metros. And going forward, most of the growth is expected in emerging technology areas. And the startup landscape becomes a very good surrogate to consider when we are looking at digital skills and emerging technology skills. Another interesting observation that we had when we started doing this is the hypothesis that we went in with is like some of the developed markets where there are cities and locations which are known for certain sectors or certain domains where typically capabilities would gravitate through, right? So we started mapping some of these sectors along with these locations. And like you can see in the map, as I'm going through, consumer sector, which will include auto, CPG, retail sector. Some of these locations typically inherently bring that strength based on the local ecosystem that is present, right? Similarly, energy resources and industrials in some of the areas. I'll talk through some of the specifics as we move forward. Financial services, life sciences, healthcare, and technology, media, and telecom. So our report essentially profiled all these 26 locations across these 5 dimensions: the startup ecosystem, the talent ecosystem, what is the infrastructure readiness in these locations, risk and regulatory environment, and social and living. And for purpose of this discussion, I will limit it to the first 3 factors, which actually bring out some specific telling stories. Now, startup ecosystem is a very interesting aspect. So when we embarked on this research, there are quite a bit of some interesting insights that came out. So when we look at the proportion of the tech and deep tech startup ecosystems that is available as part of the larger startup ecosystem in India, on an average, about 28% of this tech startup ecosystem actually comes from these emerging hub locations. Now, if you kind of double click on the 28% and see, the ratio has been increasing at an increasing rate since 2019. So what I mean to say is, from 13%, this has moved all the way up to 39% in 2022. Now that's a telling story. And on back of it, it's not a surprise that we have seen a 2.4x surge in investment into the startup ecosystem, into these emerging hubs. This kind of gives a good surrogate to the digital skills capabilities that is available in these markets. Over 20 plus accelerators in these locations, over 650 plus incubators, in fact, more incubators than in the metro locations. We also have about 3 unicorns from these emerging locations, and we are expecting this growth just in a matter of next 2 years to multiply by over 2.2x. Similarly, from a talent perspective, some interesting facts: about 11 to 15% of the total workforce actually comes from the emerging hub locations, and about 6%, the number could be small, 6% of the digitally skilled workforce that is available in the country actually comes from these locations. Now, this is based on where people are actually operating out of. Additional insights, which will give a very different perspective, is 30% of the country migrates every year into metro locations, and 60% of the total graduates come from these emerging hubs. So if we look at it from that standpoint, and with the startup ecosystem essentially being present, the installed base is already available. And what we also kind of profile, so we have not ranked the cities in any order, but we just wanted to kind of bring a bit of framing what you see on this page to say what is the total talent pool, which is IT BPM specific, that is available in these cities, and the quantum of digital talent pool that is available, right? And there are 7 locations that kind of pop up. We have Ahmedabad and Jaipur, essentially with the sheer numbers that they operate in. We have the likes of Mysore, Nagpur, and Madurai essentially coming up more on the digital talent base. And Lucknow, Bhubaneswar, Thiruvananthapuram, Chandigarh, and Coimbatore, which are some of these locations, which is also in the cusp of kind of making an entry into the tier 1 locations, if you will, right? Just profiled very specifically few locations to talk about. Coimbatore has one of the largest STEM graduates output with about 40,000 people. Gravitates towards automotive sector, EV related sectors. Ahmedabad will initially stand out for financial services with the initiatives like Gift City that is on about 20,000 STEM graduates in. Mysuru is getting to be known to become the cybersecurity hub and the center of excellence, and also the proximity to Bangalore kind of positions it more like a twin city itself. Thiruvananthapuram, interestingly, again, seen a lot of traction around the advanced technologies, data science, and auto sector related technologies, and a lot of digital capabilities, and some of the GCCs and IT BPM providers who operate heavily out of Thiruvananthapuram. From an infrastructure perspective, like I mentioned earlier, over 50% arbitrage that is seen clearly between emerging hubs and mature hubs. Interestingly, 35% of the SEZ locations are present in these emerging hub locations, and about 20%, 15 to 20% or STPIs are also available in these locations. Digital and physical connectivity is something where most of these cities have been specifically focusing on. And like I'd mentioned earlier, most of the cities, or almost all the cities in this list that you saw, are also part of the smart city mission. And with the government push in terms of more infrastructure and connectivity, and one of the themes that we also put out on the report was to say that can we look at a model of build it and companies will come, like the Dubai model. Easier said than done, but essentially that's where we see some of these emerging locations also essentially moving. So with that, I mean, it was a brief summary, like I said, a 100-page report. So you can scan this QR code and download a copy of the report. It's a free report. It must be when you can Google it up. You will also find it in NASSCOM's webpage. You will also find it on our webpage. And if there are any questions as we go through the discussions, we'll be happy to take it. Over to you, Sukanya.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Keerthi. And we've shared the link of the NASSCOM webpage where the report is available in the chat. Please go access it. Thank you for the insights. Truly, I think there are some interesting cities and opportunities coming up. And what's more interesting than hearing from people who have actually built strong teams in these locations, and these teams are creating great value for their organization and their clients. So I think I'll start with Sanjay first, Sanjay Puria of WNS, and we'll go around the table to hear from you. Sanjay, when did WNS kind of think about an emerging hub strategy, and what was your reason for exploring this opportunity?
Yeah, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Sukanya, for having me over here. I'm the Group CFO for WNS, working with the organization for more than 14 years now. Very interesting, question over here. See, we started exploring the potential of our, emerging location more than 2 decades ago, right? When we set up our operations in Nashik. Initially, our focus was primarily on a data processing, which was a simple data processing for the cost reduction, right? Because as Keerthi was saying, when we were exploring at that time, we saw that setting up of the facility cost would be lower due to the rentals and other operating costs over there. Productivity would have been higher. So that was a prime reason we started in Nashik. But later, as part of our BCP evaluation exercise, we realized that we need to add emerging locations. There is one more location to split the existing operation, which can act as a natural BCP in any eventuality. And post, exploring multiple other locations, we started our operation in Vizag, which is a large port city on the eastern coast of India. And based on some of the learnings what we had from our Nashik location over there. But over the last so many years, now as our industry has gone a significant evolution, now which may be due to technology advancements or digitization, globalization, need for the right skilled talent. So investing in this emerging location across multiple locations become a very strategic imperative, for WNS. Then we also faced, the whole COVID post-pandemic phase, right? And we all have observed that in a blink of an eye, the demand supply completely shifted to an immensely distributed model. So that further created this need of this whole emerging locations. Now, employees moving to their hometown during the pandemic, hybrid work model became the way of life. The business continuity plan requirements changed. So all this, really led to a greater need for talent in the different locations. And specifically because of the evolution, the availability was there, right? So based on this BPM evolution, now the talent availability, better infra, this emerging locations became a very key strategy for WNS. Now today, we have almost more than 3,000 talent in each location, which is Nashik and Vizag. And we have also started our operation in Indore in May 2002, which is again the largest city in the state of Madhya Pradesh. And what Keerthi was saying, these are some of the new entrants, part of the top 10 smart city across over there. So these are some of the levers and the need which made this emerging location as a very key strategic imperative for WNS, and we will keep on exploring and expanding as we move forward.
Super. Mythily, you've been quite a champion for this cause of, finding talent in emerging locations and leveraging them. So tell me, for NextWealth, Mythily, why did you choose this strategy and how has that helped the organization?
Thank you, Sukanya. And good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to be here. Mythily Ramesh, co-founder and CEO in NextWealth. NextWealth is not a financial services organization, unlike what people think. We started about 12 years back, and we started off with a small town strategy or an emerging hub strategy, as we are calling it today. We realized that there are more than 250 small towns in the country today, and almost 60% of the graduates come from these small towns. And then we also realized that there is a huge war for talent as far as the cities are concerned, because attrition was running high and people were jumping jobs. And then we said, if there is so much of talent available in the small towns, but the industry was focusing only on the top 10 cities, we said, why don't we bridge the demand and supply gap and take the work to where the people are rather than people migrating to where the work is. And we said if work can be given 3,000 miles away, why not 300 miles away? That is a premise with which we started. Of course, we started as we are a social impact organization, and our purpose is to generate employment in small towns for graduates with specific focus on women. So after we started this and we did it in a distributed delivery model, the question was, what work can be done out of here? So most people think that data entry or low-end work is what can be done there. But, in the last 12 years, we have done various work, but right now we are doing AIML data services, typically in the human-in-the-loop type of services, as well as RLHF, apart from F&A and the others that we are doing from these small towns. We have 11 centers in Salem, Chittoor, Hubli, Vellore, Mysore, Bhilai, Pondicherry, Kumbakonam, Jaipur, Udaipur, and so on. And over 5,000 people doing work here. There is certain type of work that cannot be done out of here in terms of, depending on the type of location. So international voice, etc., might be a challenge. But what we have found is that even cutting edge work like the human in the loop services or medical coding and F&A is being done out of these places by us. And the quality of work, I would say, is because of the aspiration and commitment of the people, because they want to stay back in their hometowns and do work from there. Because that is so high, the quality of work is, I would say, international level quality. In NextWealth, we have about 100 clients, and our NPS score is 73. And we have been consistently at 73 purely because of the commitment of these people to the job and the quality of work that is getting done here. So in summary, I think talent availability is not an issue. Highly trainable talent for the right type of work. They can do complex work. Infrastructure is not a problem. Network connectivity is not an issue. We have not had an issue in terms of downtime in the last 12 years, except for 15 minutes in all the 12 years that we have been in these locations. And last, of course, is the social impact of providing jobs to people here.
Super. I think, one of the concerns that a lot of people have is we cater to international market and international standards. And clearly from, WNS and NextWealth's experience is if you prepare the organization well, if you prepare and train your talent, that work can very much be done from any location. Raja?
Just to add, Sukanya, sorry, 80% of the work is, because you mentioned that 80% of the work is to international clients and to top 2 of the Fortune 100 companies whose expectations of quality is very, very high.
Yes, then they're not going to stretch their quality standards simply because you have decided to adopt a certain model.
Yeah.
Raja represents Infosys, and think one of the largest organizations here, and obviously no dearth of work and need for talent and people. So what was your rationale, Raja? And how has that, have these locations been contributing to client success or organization success?
Oh, thank you very much, Sukanya. Happy to be here. Keerthi's survey talked about 26 cities. We are there in almost 50% of those. Our sizes are larger, so our response was not because of COVID or changes that have happened in the recent past. We have been in many of these centers for more than 15 years. And the primary driver has been around talent, availability, and the need for people to work closer to where they stay. That has been the primary reason. I take care of delivery excellence in Infosys BPO, but I'll be using a IT plus BPM lens in this conversation. So, Sukanya, with your permission.
Absolutely.
So when I'm talking about all these sectors, I'm talking about a combination of both IT as well as the BPM part of Infosys. So for us, it has been, of course, a huge success. As we speak, I would say close to 18 to 20% of our workforce in India or in these emerging hubs. And the primary motivation for us, as I said, is around talent availability. It is good to find amazing talent in some of these locations and who are more comfortable working in these locations. And that has helped us create value for our clients. Sanjay talked about BCPs. When you have a large number of centers, it automatically improves options in terms of creating adequate BCP options for our clients. That definitely has helped them. I second what Mythily also said. Attrition levels are definitely lower than what we see in our larger cities. Okay. And an interesting thing is also the fact that our diversity ratios are better in smaller towns. Okay. Which speaks to an felt need in the society as well, I suppose. But I think it's very heartwarming to see better diversity rates in these smaller countries, and that speaks very well for the country as well. So there you are, Sakanya. Thank you.
Thank you. Keerthi and Shailesh, as part of your client base, I'm sure there are organizations who are either from these locations or are exploring, an emerging hub strategy. So what do you usually see as their drivers or even concerns, right? What are they concerned about, and what are their drivers to even think about an emerging hub strategy?
Sure. Hi, my name is Shailesh Narwaiye. I'm an executive director with Deloitte, and I lead the location strategy. And we advise clients in looking at new locations if they want to go for their hub and spoke strategy or multiple locations. That's where we work with them. And in our experience, we have seen two types of drivers. And let me not touch upon the drivers that all eminent panelists have just mentioned about the talent, about the infrastructure and attrition. But there are many other drivers which our clients are looking at. And the biggest one I foresee is, the future needs. Clients are not looking for what these cities are currently serving or what kind of ecosystem that is being developed there. But, they are also exploring these cities if they can cater their future needs, be it on the innovation, be it on the productivity. Will these cities be sustainable for us to do some of the high-end work, which Mythily mentioned about, let's say, analytics, AI, ML, that kind of work, because clients just come for one particular service and they continue in these cities for multiple other functions as well. So that is one biggest driver, companies are looking at whether the tier 2 cities can serve these additional services and the future scalability needs. The other is also on, how they can have their current and future growth plans in terms of scale, because many of these cities may not have that kind of large scale where they can get the trainable talent, because there is enough and good talent that is available in the tier 2 cities, but that needs to be trained. They need to be trained on the softer skills. So what is the trainable talent that is there? And if there is in a business ecosystem, if other clients have gone, so that is another driver that companies are looking at. Whether I want to be the first mover and get that advantage and others follow, or I just don't want to follow a herd and go to a newer place where I can get the talent and I can be employer of choice, where I get all the benefits, be it lesser attrition, you become an employer of choice, you are able to retain the talent and grow with the city. So that is another driver companies are looking at. And then other operational challenges around attrition, stickiness of the employee, their flexibility. So all of that people just use as their driver. And the other one of late we have seen is the ESG, whether the city has enough environmental considerations, are they doing enough social impact? Somebody spoke about our diversity ratios, gender diversity, all those concerns, clients have, which they generally are looking at whether these cities are able to follow. From an infrastructure point of view, one of the biggest concern I have seen is, whether there are direct flights or at least one-stop flights to some of these cities. If that is not there, it becomes absolute no-no for some of the international clients. But for domestic client point of view, there is another connectivity by rail or roll are being considered. So this is how I have seen the industry getting evolved, and people are looking at much more broader factors and not just sticking to the talent or cost as the key drivers. So, Keerthi, you want to add anything here?
Maybe. Yeah, Shailesh, I think you comprehensively cover it. The only addition I have is when we talk infrastructure, most of the conversations usually is around office infrastructure, facilities, network, connectivity, etc. One other thing that we have also seen, especially most of these MNCs pay attention to, is the social infrastructure. And by social infrastructure, what I mean is the typical housing residential development on one side, the hospitality industry development alongside, right, which becomes critical. Expat friendliness of a location are some additional factors also that come into consideration. So when we look at infrastructure and development, I think from all these cities perspective, it will be important to look at this holistic 360 view of development going beyond the usual factors that we would have in our radar.
Got it. Thank you. So, while we were chatting earlier with Sanjay, Mythily, and Raja, I think a few things popped up. Obviously, an emerging hub strategy has helped you give an exposure to a larger set of talent. Raja highlighted that diversity has been, an added advantage. Employee stickiness, the hunger and the attitude with which many of them work, learn has been a strength. Any other way, and this is a question open to three of you, if anybody wants to see, in any other way you believe that this adding these locations have really strengthened the organization's value proposition towards either employees or towards clients?
Yeah, maybe I'll, if I can start over there. See, from a client perspective, as everyone mentioned that, earlier the client were having a concern, right? Whether we'll have the right talent, whether we'll have the right infra, whether we'll have enough of the availability from, various concerns, right? Raja was talking about from even a, airport connectivity perspective, right? Straight one flight over there and so on, right? But over the years, if you see, with our presence as well as working, even with education institutions, right? We have successfully, converged this stride through close collaboration, which is, domain diversity and capability, right? Universities are better aligned their curriculum to the industry needs, right? The proficiency standards of the students have also thus improved over the last few years, and we have been able to raise the capabilities of this talent in these cities. So what is happening is that because of some of this right talent and now availability, referenceability, we are able to showcase the client the referenceability, based on the scale what we have already started having in some of this location, and that provides a lot of comfort to the client, right? Because initial stages, the biggest challenge for the client was that, hey, why I should be the first one, right? Whether I will get all the right things or, whether I have to invest along with you. And, we used to always start with our existing client because they used to have that comfort and, we used to move them. But today, because of this, the better infra, the talent availability, the BCP requirement, what we spoke about, because those all things have changed, these are all becoming much better comfort to them, to take to some of this location, and it's not anymore a concern, and that's a big, a change what we have seen, over the years now.
Yeah, so I think that ties into very nicely our next question, but I think Raja, you have a point here.
No, so when we speak of international clients, I think in some respects, except in certain industries, in the Western world, many of them themselves come in from small towns. They are based out of not so large cities. Okay, so we may be calling our emerging hubs as smaller towns, but the sort of infrastructure that they would expect in larger cities is the same thing that they would expect in other cities as well. Okay, I think it is our ability to sort of show them primarily, and Sanjay is right about the talent part of it. If that comfort is given, I don't think clients would really worry about whether we operate from one of the metro cities or some of the other cities. Yes, airport connectivity would probably be an important factor. But with so many airports coming up in the country now, we are talking about 150, 200 airports now. I think that's also a problem that should go away very, very quickly. But most of our clients, I'm talking not just about Infosys, but about the industry as well. Many of them are are comfortable with being in smaller towns. They probably may prefer smaller towns. You get into Bangalore and you find a 1 crore population, it can be a bit unsettling for some people, really.
I think if I
Raja,
can
on
add
that
to what
note,
Raja said, see what is it that the clients actually look for? They look for definitely operational excellence. That is a given wherever you operate from, right? So that is number one. Second is they're looking for operational stability, right? And which means that they're looking for attrition to be on the lower side, which you can get from these smaller towns. Attrition is typically less than 15% per annum. Third thing that they look for is when they do have short-term projects or things like that, they want the people to be able to do the variable type of projects where there are spikes and they want that flexibility. Now you can easily do it here because of the talent availability. You can even do local crowdsourcing, right? So that is the third thing that is available there. And fourth is the flexibility in which they operate, whether it's nighttime, daytime, weekends and things like that, the flexibility they look for. And last point, to Raja's point, which is very valid, is that many of our clients, it really doesn't matter if you're able to give them all of this and at affordable rates. It doesn't matter to the client where you operate from. And I can tell you, one of my largest client didn't visit us for 6 years, even though they have an office in Bangalore. And they could have just driven 3.5 hours and come and visited our location. They visited for their 10th year anniversary is when they first visited our location. 10 of them came and visited, even though we have about 1,500 people working for them. So it actually doesn't matter. As long as you're able to deliver all this, I think clients are happy.
And maybe, Sukanya, I'll just add, see, there is a big realization at the client end, specifically during COVID, right? Now, because then they realize that suddenly, all these people or the talent, what we were actually, recruiting were coming from all those kind of cities, right? And during pandemic, everyone went over there. And, then the comfort around work from anywhere, because they showcased that in the last, in at least, 6 to 9 months or maybe a year, the entire operations was very smoothly handled, work from anywhere. And that is a big realization to them. And those concerns of, I would not even call tier 2, these are all emerging locations, right? Because these are going to be the next big cities as we move forward. So that has given a really good comfort to all the clients that location doesn't matter. It's all about the talent availability. And in the time that you are able to get the work and deliver those services very smoothly, that's what all matter, from an outcome perspective.
Yeah, and I remember those days, like when I'm sure each one of you would have done your plotting on locations within India and what is that headcount and seen those heat maps and been completely amazed, right, of, where all is our work getting delivered from. I think, Shailesh, you were saying something, and maybe we'll wait for you to finish and then move to the next.
No, I just wanted to echo Raja's point that, a lot of clients are thinking about the quality of life for their employees as well. So they would prefer them to come from these even cities which are getting emerged, because there the quality of life is way better, and they feel that, as a part of the MNCs, they want to have their employees across the globe should get a similar quality of life. So that's also one of the considerations for people to go to cities which are less crowded or having slightly lesser, great infrastructure, but the quality of talent plus the quality of life is good.
Great. So I think, my next question was around what does it take to be successful in these locations and create a model that works. And I think there are 3 dimensions to it. The client part we touched, a little bit, so we'll come back to it. But the other 2 things that I think about, one is obviously the culture and the talent building. And the second one is the operating and the delivery model itself in terms of working between locations. Arjun, I want to pull you in here. Arjun represents Conneqt, and Arjun, if I'm not mistaken, almost 70% of your team operates out of emerging locations. So how do you build this organization culture and talent building across these locations where you may actually have people from very different demography in the 30% of your metro locations and then 70% there? So how do you create an organization which caters to the needs of talent building across?
Thanks, Sukanya. Good to be here. Arjun Ramaraju, CEO of Conneqt Business Solutions. So I think if you look at just expanding briefly on what we've discussed before, I'll just briefly touch upon 1 minute on the customer side and then come to what we need to do internally. See, customers are largely coming to us because they see value in the organizations that we are all working for and their value that we provide, correct? And they're largely coming to us because we are the experts. We know what it takes to get the job done, and they're relying on us for some of their core processes, correct? So I think the customer side, I would relatively think, though is critical, is probably to some degree the easier bit. We can convince customers, given that they have taken the leap of faith in coming to us, all right? And many of them now are second generation outsourcers, and I've seen India and I've seen the comfort of what India can do, all right? Now, when we look at your question of what does it take to create talent at scale in these emerging hubs, I think the important thing for us is what is the purpose that the companies are looking to do, right? I think from our perspective, when we looked at it, we have relied largely on what is the purpose of ourselves as a company. And our purpose in our case is about looking at helping our customers grow their revenue, efficiencies, and experience, and making sure employees are able to see this larger goal and the larger vision that we're looking to do. All right. So it's important to build that. Second, we look at all of these hubs and we look at it. It's important to look at the various customers for whom we are looking to be providing the services, right? So it's extremely important to bring the key priorities of the customers to the core, right? Today, when we look at it, and incidentally, when we have done this for about almost 15 years in these various hubs, the change that we have seen is historically customers who look at operational metrics, now they are moving towards business metrics. They were looking at just operations, they're looking at solutions from us, right? So it is extremely important to bring the dimension of the customer requirements along with our own vision and purpose when we look at putting together the culture of the company. So once we are able to look at it, it is easy to set up larger training programs, learning programs, and look at all the needs of how do we need to structure everything that is required for employees across grades, across roles, to be able to provide. And today, thanks to technology, right, I think it is extremely easy for us to bring people across. I mean, you can look at the quality leaders, you can look at the team leaders, you can look at all of them. It is easy to bring them on a common platform. So what we have essentially looked at is leveraging technology to look at providing this platform, making sure that we have a good vision and good purpose, and making sure we're really looking to identify the key priorities of the customers, the key business objectives of the past customers. Once they are in place, it is easy to curate a set of training, both one time on an ongoing basis, to create the right ingredients for our people to operate and set the right foundation for culture and making sure we are able to operate in a consistent manner across these locations.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mythily, from your experience, do we need different kind of training mechanisms in these locations? Are they different, or are there certain cultural nuances that we need to keep in mind when we create processes around it?
Yeah, I think definitely cultural nuances you have to keep in mind. So 100% of our employees are in these emerging hubs, right? And what we find is with every location, there are cultural nuances. The local nuances are different, the language is different, the way they interact is different, the skills are different, and therefore you have to actually right size the work, or correctly match the work to the type of people and the skills in each of these locations. For example, you might find in a location like Salem, people are more diffident and quiet, whereas a place like Mysore, people are a little more aggressive and are able to communicate better with customers. So according to that, one has to understand the local nuances, the local demographics and perspective of the people and the local culture. And based on that, your training has to definitely change. So what we do is we train to whatever the customer wants, but the training has to be based on, so we do a lot more of things like communication skills in some places. In other places, we do more of people management and conflict management. So we do different types of softer skills training in different locations. And even the core work, not all work can be given in a Mysore and not all work can be given in a Chittoor. So each of those locations have their own skills and capabilities. So we have sort of mapped to say that these locations, these type of skills, so this type of work, and therefore this type of training. And that needs to be done.
So Mythily, you may actually have a client who has, say, 3 different projects, which could be running from 3 different locations, depending on the skill needs.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. So we do have 3 clients like that.
Interesting. Raja, very large organization. It's not that easy to, custom design, like how Mythily mentioned, that each location will have a DNA, and based on that, a certain supporting training. So if there is a large organization that is looking to build an emerging model hub and eventually at scale, how do you ensure that your training and your cultural alignment can be put in place?
While Mythily was talking about this, I was trying to see if the audience were belonging to 2 sets of organizations. One which are trying to move away from larger organizations to larger cities to smaller cities, and people who may be willing to just start afresh in these places, right? And then these organizations have completely different sets of problems. Okay. For us, for large organizations, and Infosys is just one of them, Arun talked about common values and vision and stuff like that. That's all very important. How do we ensure that? But we need a mix of both. We need those. We need to have the diversity of inherent cultural traits, for want of a better word, in each of those locations. But how do you still have, in our case, the Infosys way of doing things? Okay. Beyond training, it would be always useful to sort of seed people from the larger locations into these smaller locations, right? So some sort of a diffusion happens, and then the culture gets built over a period of time. One of the things that we would do is try to encourage people to move from our larger centers to these emerging hubs. That's something that we really try to do. We'll try to incentivize that through various means. Okay, but I think that's a critical element that may be required in the case of larger organizations compared to smaller ones who may just set up, I wouldn't say from scratch, but probably are at a completely different state in terms of size. I'm not talking about growth, but in terms of size of the thing. Okay, so for larger organizations, this seeding may be required because we finally need to establish a common, our company way of doing things, and that comes out of not just training, it also not just shared values, but also people, practices, operational processes and practices. So all of those things, some sort of a commonality needs to be established. Surenya.
Thank you. Sanjay, any thoughts around operating and delivery models, and in your experience, has the kind of a model where there is a, the team is split across locations or creating unique capabilities in different locations, that your organization has experimented with and seen some pros and cons?
Yeah, definitely. Because as Mythily was talking about, specifically around the skills, availability, from a culture perspective, some nuances definitely you can always find, when you are going in these emerging locations. For an example, our healthcare COE is based out of Vizag, as we leverage the talent pool of B Pharma graduates over there, right? So, though we have our domain university, where we keep on training those talent into those domains specifically, which is required to be delivered out of some of these locations over there, right? I mentioned about the operating model, even from a BCP perspective, right? You need to have a split of the operation, because when when you are delivering a particular process in a particular location, right? And specifically in some of this, eventuality, sometimes it's very difficult to trigger the traditional way of the BCP, right? So this natural BCP of the split on the operating model definitely works over there. See, now today, like we are serving into all the vital sectors, right? Which is healthcare, shipping and logistics, high tech, travel, banking and financial services. Because of this domain universities, what we have created, because earlier it was believed that the complex work could have been done only from the metro cities, right? And emerging locations are only for some of the very simple data processing. So that's not the case, right? Because of the technology evolution, because of the training what we as an organization have been doing, and the tools availability, this has completely got changed from our operating model perspective, right? So, as well as this hub model specifically, right? It works because of any eventuality, you are having the people work from home, but also at the same time they are able to go and come to work to the near places over here, right? So we have been now working with our client, co-creating these solutions, this operating model, which is giving a really good comfort to them to work out of some of these locations now. So that's what it's been, we have been trying, and it has been very successful, and not anymore any like a hard sale what we have to do out there.
Thank you. Some of the points that I had in mind to discuss, talk about have also started coming in questions. So let's move to the questions and see, how we can blend in. So one of the questions is, while, you did talk about clients really looking for a value, it'll be interesting if some of you can share your experience of convincing some of the, some of the harder clients, right, who was easier to convince, and what did you showcase? Was it a trip to the place? Was it an interaction? I mean, maybe 2-3 tactics or ways in which you were able to navigate a client who was slightly skeptic. Open for anybody who wants to talk about it.
I can go. So, yeah, one definitely, as you said, a visit to the location. And I found that the moment they come and visit the location, the whole perspective changes, because they find, oh, infrastructure is great, the connectivity is great, the space is so good, and the people are all able to talk very well. So their perspective completely changes. So that is definitely a visit to the location. Second, also interacting with some of the people there and understanding where they are coming from and what they are looking for, what is their aspiration, what is their commitment to this place, etc. So interaction with some of the managers and the people there definitely is a second thing. Third is where even then people are not convinced, we look at saying that, okay, try us, do a POC and from these locations. And the first POC that we did was with Yahoo, and just 15 people. And that was actually a game changer at that time, because though they didn't expand into that particular project later, they gave us a good reference to all our other customers. So third is definitely doing POCs and proving you can do to that level of quality that they want. And fourth is that sometimes we ask for the data to see if we can do analytics from these locations. So if you can do analytics, you can do the other work as well. So that's what we have tried.
Yeah, and I'll just add, over there, definitely the visit of the client is this location. But, mind-boggling for them is, some of the complex processes, like, one of the point was Mythily was talking about like analytics, but, other very high domain intensive complex processes, which are getting done from those locations, is completely changing. And, wherever clients still have some concern, reference call, because, we have a lot of the clients where we are delivering, and they are the real brand ambassador for us, right? So those referenceable call makes a lot of difference to this client and give them a lot of comfort. Definitely when they visit, it's a big change for them to see those infra changes, whether it's a road, rail, air connectivity, the grade A facilities, right, from where we are working, because it's another concern that, what sort of facilities will be available in this location. But, but now when they see all this great facility, those are really convincing for them and much better comforts of them once they visit.
Two or 3 points I can state, Sukanya, to a point of how can we help customers. See, 3 things. One, I find in many cases, these are perceived fears rather than real ones, which come in the way. So one thing what we have done is really try to understand with the client, what are their real specific concerns, and really spend time with understanding. And just the discussion brings out a lot in the open with respect to what could be perceived fears or challenges versus real ones. I think so. I would say that is number one. Number two, in many cases, there are consultants who are helping them, and it's the consultants sometimes who probably have an issue of fear which is getting planted, right? So it's important to understand how is the deal getting structured, right? Where is their concern coming, and how do we look to address it? So it's important to understand that. Third, obviously, in many of these cases, there is a bit of negotiation that happens. So I would say this is an important point when it comes to overall negotiation as to how there is flexibility for location vis-a-vis some of the larger things that we will all, maybe a different point that we will need to negotiate with the customer, right? And I would say there's also an opportunity here for senior management to onto the table to discuss this particular item. And usually when that conversation with senior management happens, I find there's a larger comfort because you're also talking to senior management on the other side, and they tend to look at location differently than opposed to the mid management who are just looking at a particular way of evaluating deals, right? So I would say adopting some of those 3 or 4 things has helped us convince the customers to look at these locations successfully.
Super. Then let me ask, sorry, Mythily, you were saying something.
No, I just wanted to share a quick story if I can. We had one client who we were just not able to convince. And then, what we told them was, here is a set of sample transactions. You do it for the people that you have recruited, and you give us the same transactions and we will do it. Do a blind test. And he actually did that. And at the end of it, he shared the results with us. The quality was equal with his team, which was based in Bombay. The quality was equal, productivity was 10% higher. He was completely taken aback because till then we were trying to convince and we were just not able to convince. Once this happened, he said, okay, maybe this is a shot in the, once in a blue moon type of a thing. So he did one more POC with us, again a sample test, and again very similar results. So sometimes I think you just have to take the challenge head on and do it.
Thank you. I'll bring the consultants here because, Arjun did mention the consultancy and the advisory that people get. Have you guys seen that one approach works better against others when clients are a little unsure about whether they want to set up operations in an emerging location?
So, some of the panelists did cover in terms of your site visits and, how they see what they're going to buy is what they see. One specific nuance I just want to bring to a table. Of course, we show them a lot of our junior staff and, people at entry level. We talk about the trainable talent. But one of the concern I have seen is the mid-management for a lot of these clients as well, who are going to do the actual delivery, do the communication. So getting them upfront and doing interaction through them also helps. And a lot of companies are running those programs to get some of the soils back to the cities, move back to Mangalore. Those kind of initiatives are happening. So that also gives the comfort, because if you have worked in MNC and if you are able to show that from a tier 2 or emerging city also, you are having this mid-management talent, that gives the comfort. Of course, all other points of, visiting, showing them infrastructure, we have to do that.
Sure. I think I'll combine 2 other questions that we've got is, how do you build a vision for these locations for the long term? And how do you ensure that you're highly talented or, the ambitious set of people that you have hired in these locations find career paths and are not kind of motivated to just switch and move to a metro where suddenly they feel like opportunities are more? And I'm sure such situations will happen. Many even you will enable. But then, for the long-term stability and maturity of a center, it's also important for you to hold on to some of that talent there. So anyone wants to start the conversation on this?
Let me
Raja?
let me try to address a smaller portion of that question, Sukanya. Okay. Which is, why would somebody move to a larger city? typically for a career growth and higher compensation and stuff like that. Which is why we think employee cost, compensation cost is not a major factor. It can happen in pockets, it can happen in certain locations for a short period of time. But that is not the real reason why an organization should try to move to emerging hubs. Okay. We could try various other, there could be various other reasons, of course, right? But how do we start? How do we ensure that the temptation to move to larger cities is less? By providing a good career path for people, by paying them reasonably well. If those two things will continue, the attractiveness of the smaller hubs will continue for some time until they become massive. So if we are able to address those two elements, how do I provide a career path? How do I ensure reasonable compensation? Okay. And how as an organization can I deliver on that? By making those hubs become larger ones. It's a bit of a content. I don't want them to be smaller hubs. I want them to grow. I want them to become as large as some of the other ones. So if not as large, but at least. But that way, I provide them career path and growth opportunities. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things is also to ensure that we continuously focus on growing these hubs. And Sanjay and Mythily and Arjun talked about it in different contexts. On the technology side, for example, you could have some of these hubs almost like being the nodal center for some emerging technologies, right? Or anchor clients, or whatever would work for you in certain situations. Okay, so we should. There's no such thing as being contented with a manageable size in an emerging hub. Okay, it may not be sustainable as long as the industry is growing well. If the industry is also very mature and it's going at an average economic growth thing, then it's a different matter. But if the industry is growing faster, the emerging hubs need to grow at least as fast as the industry.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add, over there. See, emerging locations should just not be looked as a cost reduction location.
Absolutely.
It's the first most important piece. It need to be looked as a strategic location for the organization, which is going to be there for the long term, which, where you are able to have a value proposition from your client perspective, from your talent perspective, and all stakeholders, basically, right? That's a very important stuff. The moment you have that clear, definitely the growth is going to be there. All investments are going to be there. We are, as I spoke about, then you're working with, educational institutions for the talent, skilling of the talent program, right? You're working with state governments to ensure that the better infra are available for you. And once those things are there, the growth is inevitable. And the moment the growth is there are enough career opportunities for your talent, right? With the scale. Like as I mentioned that we have more than 3,000 people in each locations now. So with that scale, you are able to provide a talent, a career progression plan, and we have enough examples to showcase that where the talent has joined as the most junior level and have gone to the top 2, top 3 level in that center. So that is the whole career progression plan what you can offer. So, but the very key is it has to be a strategic location and not like a cost reduction location.
Yeah.
Just to add what Sanjay said.
Part of it. Sorry, Arjun. Sorry.
Shailesh, we'll go with Arjun and then we'll come.
Sure.
No, I think the strategic part is the most important one. Second, I think it's extremely important to be very transparent with senior management leaders within the company as to why this is going to be long-term for the company and long-term for the individuals. Right. And I think if we have to put the right reward structures in place, right opportunities in place, I think it needs to be done in a very transparent manner. And I think once we have a few examples of leaders who have gone there, made a difference, and it has helped them on their career path, I think there are enough reasons for the rest of the other people to take them as role models and look at it. But I think the important bit is make it long-term, make it strategic, make it impactful, both for the companies and for the individuals. And I think once they see it, I think it's a lot more sustainable.
Shailesh?
Yeah. So, and there are a lot of things you have to do, not just say that it's a strategic location. For example, one of my client, what they have done, every quarter they get all their senior leaders to go to this center and spend 2 their days there as a part of their executive committee meetings. Or you have executive sponsor for each of these centers, including the ones which are in emerging hubs. So a lot of these things also give a visibility, and employees will have more stickiness because a lot of them, by virtue of growth, will get better and growing roles within the organization. That gives them a good career path. But the visibility across the organization also really helps for these centers to have increased stickiness for the employees, keeping all the salary related aspects very similar as per the market conditions.
Mythily?
We don't face an issue at all because 100% of our people are in these locations. But on your question of migrating to cities, see, out of every 100 people who graduate from here, 30 will go to the city. That is not your target. We should not even look at that 30. They will anyway go to the city. You should just look at the 70 who want to remain back in these locations. That should be the target. Next point is on career path. I think career path is there upwards, horizontal, across centers. So people have moved in 18 months, they are team leaders. They moved from one process to, they've done education process to medical process to some other process. And also in these locations, I think career path is what we have seen is not so much an issue as much as being, comfortable and, happy working in the job. So that's what we have seen. Wherever there is a career path requirement or a need from their points of view, it's vertical across centers. So we really not had that issue.
Super. Thank you all for these insights. You're sharing your experiences. The conversations have been very, very valuable. We are going to be continuing this series and we're going to talk about individual cities, bring case studies from individual cities out and share more insights. Please look at our report. There is a question around government support. Our reports thoroughly cover it. This is a great opportunity for us, right? This is a great opportunity for us to create more organizations, to create more opportunity, to create a stronger India, and to uplift the quality of life and economic condition across the country. And of course, it is not for everybody. Of course, everybody will not be the first mover. But if you think your organization has an opportunity and the potential, it's definitely something that's worth spending some time on. We as NASSCOM are happy to connect you to other organizations who may have explored this strategy and will be happy to share their experiences and all of those details. So we are here to support that journey. If you think that's something that you would be looking at, do attend our webinar series and do drop us a note, and we'll be happy to connect you with any local organizations or any other organization who can share their experience and help you build confidence. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Sanjay, Mythily, Arjun, Shailesh, Raja, Keerthi, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sukanya. Just one point, there are a lot of questions I know that we didn't answer. Do you think we should be picking it up and answering offline?
I'll
leave it out to you. Yeah.
Because there were certain one-on-one questions which I did not pick. If you're comfortable, we'll share it, and we can share back those things.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.